I never saw it coming. Looking back, I wonder if there were signs, subtle shifts in Emma's tone, the way she hesitated before answering a simple question, or how her eyes darted away when I asked about her upcoming business trip. But I was a fool, a trusting husband who believed in the vows we exchanged over 2 decades ago. She stood in front of me in our bedroom, packing her suitcase with precise movements, her slender fingers folding each blouse with practiced ease. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching, oblivious to the betrayal lurking beneath her calm demeanor. I still can't believe I'm leaving for 2 whole weeks, Emma sighed, shaking her head as she zipped up her luggage. It's such an important retreat, Daniel. We're finalizing deals that could take my firm to the next level. I smiled at her, my chest swelling with pride. That's incredible, Em. You've worked so hard for this. You deserve a break in paradise, even if it's technically work. Her lips curved into a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Maybe that should have been my first clue. I just feel bad about leaving you and Olivia, she said, her voice softer now. 2 weeks is a long time. I waved off her concern, chuckling. We'll be fine. Besides, Olivia is so busy with her studies, I doubt she'll even notice you're gone. That part was true. Our daughter, Olivia, was in her final year of college, preparing to move abroad for her master's degree. I was proud of her, a bright, independent young woman with a sharp mind and a heart full of ambition. Emma exhaled, running a hand through her sleek auburn hair. I know. I wish I could be here to spend more time with her before she leaves. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. Go. Focus on your work. Olivia and I will be fine. Maybe we'll plan something special, just the two of us. She hesitated, her fingers tightening in mine for a brief second before she pulled away. You're amazing, Daniel, she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. At that moment, I felt like the luckiest man alive. If only I had known the truth. The next morning, I dropped Emma off at the airport, kissed her goodbye, and watched as she disappeared past security. She turned once, offering a small wave, her eyes glimmering with something I couldn't quite place. Then she was gone. I had no idea that she wasn't going on a business retreat. I had no idea that she was stepping onto a plane to meet him. As I drove home, I decided to surprise Olivia. Over the past year, our time together had been fleeting, stolen between her classes and my work. With her moving overseas soon, I wanted to give her something to remember, something meaningful. When I arrived home, Olivia was in the kitchen, her dark hair tied up in a messy bun, flipping through a textbook while absent-mindedly stirring a cup of coffee. Hey, kiddo, I greeted, setting my keys on the counter. Hey, Dad, she mumbled without looking up. I smirked. How would you feel about a little adventure before you leave for Europe? That got her attention. She set her book down and arched an eyebrow. Define adventure. I slid 2 plane tickets across the counter toward her. She picked them up, her eyes scanning the destination. Hawaii. Her mouth fell open. Wait, are you serious? Completely. She let out an excited laugh, shaking her head in disbelief. Dad, this is insane. When did you plan this? Just now. I figured. Why sit around at home while your mother is off in paradise? We deserve a little vacation too. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, but then she hesitated. What about work? Can you just leave like that? I shrugged. I already took time off. I was going to surprise your mom with a trip after she got back, but now it looks like I have a new travel partner. She grinned, her previous hesitation melting away. Okay, this is officially the best idea you've ever had. I laughed. Then go pack. We leave in 2 days. If I had known what awaited us there, I would have never stepped foot on that plane. While Olivia and I were buzzing with excitement, Emma was on a different journey, one that had nothing to do with business. I would later piece it together, the timeline of deception, the careful steps she took to ensure I never suspected a thing. She boarded her flight with the air of a woman traveling for work. She had the perfect alibi, emails from her boss, itinerary details, even work calls leading up to the trip. But once she landed in Honolulu, she wasn't heading to any corporate retreat. She walked through the crowded airport, her heart pounding in anticipation, until she spotted him. Ryan, tall, broad-shouldered, with that same easy smile he had back in college, the one that once made her weak in the knees. "Emma," he murmured, pulling her into his arms. She let out a shaky breath, pressing herself against him. "I can't believe I'm doing this." He pulled back slightly, looking into her eyes. "You're here. That's all that matters." Her wedding ring glinted under the fluorescent lights, but she didn't take it off. Not yet. Hand in hand, they left the airport, heading toward their secluded resort, the place where they would rewrite history, oblivious to the disaster that awaited them. 2 days later, Olivia and I were on our way to the same island. The flight was smooth, the anticipation buzzing between us. Olivia scrolled through her phone, texting her friends, and occasionally glancing at me with a soft smile. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," she murmured. "It's been a while since we had a real trip together." I nodded, watching the clouds pass outside the window. "Yeah, it feels good, doesn't it?" She leaned her head against my shoulder. "It really does." If only I had known that just a few miles away, Emma was in another man's arms. That while I was sitting beside my daughter, feeling like a good father, her boyfriend was wrapped around my wife. That fate was leading us toward an unbearable truth, one that would rip our family apart and leave nothing but wreckage in its wake. For now, though, I was blissfully unaware. And so, we flew toward paradise, completely blind to the storm waiting for us there. The sun was mercilessly golden, casting shimmering reflections across the crystal-clear waters of the Pacific. A gentle breeze carried the scent of salt and hibiscus through the open-air resort, and the rhythmic crash of the waves against the shore played like a lullaby for lovers. Emma stood on the balcony of her private villa, wrapped in nothing but a silk robe. She held a glass of wine in her hand, savoring the taste as she gazed at the endless ocean stretching before her. Behind her, Ryan emerged from the bed, draping his arms around her waist, his breath warm against her skin. "You seem lost in thought," he murmured, pressing a slow kiss against her shoulder. She exhaled softly, leaning into him, just trying to take it all in. The past 3 days had been a blur of passion, laughter, and reckless indulgence. She had let herself get swept up in Ryan's touch, in the nostalgia of what they used to be. With him, she felt young again, unburdened by the responsibilities of a wife and mother. Here, in Hawaii, she wasn't Emma, the devoted wife of Daniel. She wasn't Emma, the mother of Olivia. She was just a woman rediscovering a part of herself she thought she had lost. Ryan ran his fingers through her hair, twirling a strand between his fingers. "Are you thinking about Daniel?" Her grip on the wine glass tightened. No, it wasn't a lie. She had been careful not to think about him, to avoid the guilt that tried to claw its way into her chest whenever her phone buzzed with his messages. She had kept her responses brief. "Daniel, hope your flight was smooth. Miss you already." "Emma, it was fine." "Busy settling in." "Daniel, everything okay? You seem distant." "Emma, just a lot on my plate." She had silenced the phone after that, tossing it into the bedside drawer. She wanted to pretend, just for these 2 weeks, that this was her life, that this was where she belonged, that she wouldn't have to go home and face the man who had trusted her completely. While Emma was lost in her fantasy, Olivia and I were stepping off a plane into the same island paradise. The moment we arrived at the resort, Olivia let out a contented sigh, stretching her arms over her head. "Dad, I think I'm going to love it here." I chuckled, rolling our suitcases behind me. "I had a feeling you might." The resort was breathtaking. Thatched roof bungalows lined the shore, nestled between towering palm trees. A massive infinity pool overlooked the ocean, and soft Hawaiian music played in the background as guests sipped cocktails beneath the sun. I had booked us a spacious suite with a stunning ocean view. It was perfect, exactly what I had hoped for. A trip to remember. As we settled into our room, Olivia flopped onto the couch, pulling out her phone. I wish Ryan could have come, she muttered absent-mindedly. I glanced at her, raising an eyebrow. Ryan? She nodded, still typing away. My boyfriend. I told you about him, remember? My stomach twisted slightly. Not in detail. She smiled, finally looking up. He's great. Smart, funny. You'd like him? I hummed, unsure how I felt about that. Olivia had never introduced me to any of her boyfriends before. Something about it made me uneasy. Maybe it was just the typical fatherly instinct, the protective edge that never quite went away. Still, I trusted her judgment. Maybe I'll meet him someday, I said, keeping my voice light. Yeah, she grinned. Maybe. Little did we know, we were already much closer to him than we realized. The next few days were blissful. Olivia and I spent our time snorkeling, hiking through waterfalls, and indulging in way too much food. One evening, as the sky turned a rich orange, we walked along the beach, barefoot in the sand. This is exactly what I needed, Olivia admitted, looking out at the horizon. I've been so stressed with school and moving, this just feels right. I smiled, squeezing her shoulder. That's all I wanted. Just some time with my girl before she leaves me for Europe. She laughed. I promise I'll call. Maybe even visit. Better. As we continued walking, she suddenly stopped, her gaze locking onto something ahead of us. Her smile faltered. I followed her line of sight and saw them. A couple, a man and a woman, sitting at a candlelit dinner table near the shoreline. The man's hand was resting over the woman's, his thumb tracing gentle circles against her skin. They were laughing, leaning into each other. I turned back to Olivia, puzzled by the way her entire body had gone rigid. Olivia? She didn't answer. I looked again. This time, I paid closer attention to the man. His face was illuminated by the flickering candle between them. And then I noticed the woman beside him. My heart stopped. Emma, my wife. For a moment, the world around me faded. The sound of the ocean, the music from the nearby bar, the distant chatter of other guests. It all became muffled, like I was underwater. My vision tunneled on the two of them, laughing, holding hands, as if nothing else existed. Emma's eyes gleamed with warmth as she stared at him, her fingers brushing against his jawline. And then she turned slightly, and her gaze landed directly on us. Everything froze. Emma's face drained of color. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I felt like my lungs had caved in, like I was suffocating on the betrayal unfolding before me. Beside me, Olivia took a slow step forward, her hands trembling. Her voice was barely a whisper. Ryan? At the sound of her voice, the man, Ryan, snapped his head up. His reaction was just as horrifying as Emma's. His eyes went wide, his body going rigid like he had been caught in a nightmare. My daughter's boyfriend was sitting across from my wife. Emma's lover was the same man my daughter had trusted. The air around us was thick with something unspeakable, something that didn't belong in paradise, something dark. Emma opened her mouth, her voice breaking. Daniel, I turned and walked away. I didn't trust myself to stand there for another second, because if I did, I wasn't sure what I might do. The air was thick with the scent of salt and grilled seafood as Olivia and I strolled into the restaurant. The sky was painted with streaks of deep orange and purple, the last traces of sunlight fading into the horizon. The waves lapped gently against the shore, a soothing rhythm that should have made the evening feel perfect. It should have been perfect. Olivia was in high spirits, chatting excitedly about her plans for Europe. I smiled, nodding at the right moments, but my mind was heavy with unease. Ever since she had mentioned Ryan's name days ago, I had felt an odd sense of discomfort. I told myself it was just my protective instincts as a father, but there was something else, something deeper, that I couldn't shake. As we walked into the open-air restaurant, the golden glow of string lights made the space feel warm and intimate. The tables were arranged along the beach, giving diners a front-row seat to the ocean's beauty. A soft Hawaiian tune played in the background, blending seamlessly with the gentle crash of waves. The host greeted us with a friendly smile. "Welcome. Just the two of you tonight?" I nodded. "Yes. This way, please." We followed him past rows of candlelit tables, Olivia already scanning the menu, murmuring about which seafood dish she wanted to try. The mood was light, the atmosphere perfect. Then, it happened. Olivia suddenly stopped mid-step, her breath hitching in her throat. Her fingers tightened around the menu, knuckles turning white. I turned to her, my brows furrowing. "Liv?" She wasn't listening. Her gaze was fixed ahead, her entire body frozen in place. Confused, I followed her line of sight. And then I saw them. At a table near the edge of the beach, bathed in the soft flickering of candlelight, sat Emma and Ryan. They were laughing, their faces illuminated by the glow of the lantern between them. Emma's hand rested lightly on Ryan's arm, her eyes shining with warmth as he spoke. They looked like lovers. No, they were lovers. A slow, suffocating dread settled in my stomach. My limbs felt heavy, my chest tight. The realization clawed its way into my brain, sinking in deep. My wife, my daughter's boyfriend, sitting together, laughing, touching, oblivious to the fact that their betrayal had just been laid bare. A deep, sickening silence stretched between Olivia and me. Then, she spoke. "That's not." Her voice was barely a whisper, cracking as though she were trying to convince herself it wasn't real. "That can't be. Ryan?" Her knees nearly buckled, but I grabbed her arm, steadying her. My own hands were trembling, though I refused to let the rage bubbling inside me show. At that moment, as if sensing our presence, Ryan lifted his gaze, and his face drained of color. Emma followed his gaze. When her eyes locked onto us, she went completely still. A beat of silence, then another. Their laughter vanished. The world seemed to stand still. Olivia's lips trembled as she took a shaky step forward. "Mom." The word barely made it past her lips, yet it sliced through the air like a knife. Emma's mouth opened and closed, her hands retracting from Ryan's arm as if suddenly burned. Ryan, on the other hand, looked like a man who had just been caught in a deadly trap, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. The weight of realization crashed over Olivia like a tidal wave. She turned to Ryan, her voice now a sharp demand. "What is this?" Her words were laced with pain, disbelief, betrayal. Ryan swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Olivia, I can explain." "Explain?" She let out a choked, bitter laugh. "You're sitting here, with my mother, on a romantic dinner date. What explanation could possibly make sense?" Emma reached out. "Liv, please, don't touch me." Olivia recoiled as if Emma were poison. Her eyes were wide, glossy with the sting of unshed tears. "How could you? You're my mother." Emma's face twisted with desperation. "It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like." Olivia's voice broke. "It looks like my mother has been sleeping with my boyfriend behind my back. Tell me I'm wrong." Silence. The kind that confirmed everything. Emma's lips parted, but no words came. And that was all the answer Olivia needed. A tremor passed through her, and her face crumpled. She let out a sharp, broken gasp, like the sound of something shattering inside her. I wanted to say something, do something, but I stood there, rigid, cold, watching the woman I had loved for years scramble for words that wouldn't come. I had expected anger to take over, but instead, there was just emptiness. A vast, hollow void inside me. This was the moment my marriage died. The realization of it was devastatingly quiet. Emma turned to me, her face twisted in panic. "Daniel, please say something." I met her gaze, my expression unreadable. I could see the fear in her eyes. She had never seen me like this before. So eerily silent, so utterly detached. I had no words for her. No sympathy. No forgiveness. Just a cold, unshakable certainty that whatever love I had for this woman was gone. Finally, I turned to Olivia, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. Let's go. She didn't argue, didn't say another word. She turned and walked away, and I followed, leaving Emma and Ryan behind in the paradise they had turned into hell. The silence between Olivia and me as we walked back to the hotel was deafening. The ocean waves still crashed against the shore. The wind still whispered through the palm trees. But everything felt wrong. The world had tilted on its axis, and nothing would ever be the same. Olivia was a step ahead of me, her fists clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. She didn't speak, didn't cry. She just marched forward, her movements stiff, as if she were holding herself together by sheer will. I knew the moment we reached the hotel, the moment she was alone with her thoughts, the dam would break. I also knew there was no stopping what was about to happen next. Because Olivia wasn't the type to suffer in silence. She would demand answers, and Ryan would have no place to hide. The moment we stepped into the hotel lobby, Olivia whirled around, her breath ragged. I need to see him. Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could see the storm raging beneath the surface. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. Liv, maybe you should take a minute. No, her voice cracked, but she quickly steadied herself. I need to look him in the eye. I need to hear him say it. I had seen heartbreak before, but never like this. Never in my own daughter's eyes. I nodded. I'll be here. She didn't respond, just turned and stormed toward the elevator, her nails digging into her palms. I watched her go, every part of me screaming to protect her. But some battles weren't mine to fight. This one belonged to her. Olivia pounded on the door, her breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. She had sent Ryan a message minutes ago. We need to talk. Now. The door swung open, and there he was. Ryan looked pale, disheveled, like a man who had already lost everything. Olivia, before he could say another word, she shoved him backward, stepping into his room. The air was thick with tension, with all the words left unspoken. She turned to him, her eyes blazing. How long? Ryan swallowed hard. Olivia, please. How long? Her voice was dangerously low, vibrating with fury and heartbreak. His jaw clenched. A few months. A sharp intake of breath. A few months. She had suspected a lie, but hearing it confirmed felt like a knife twisting in her gut. You disgust me, she spat, taking a step back as if being near him made her physically ill. Liv, I didn't mean for this to happen, he said desperately. It was complicated. Your mom and I, don't you dare say her name. Ryan flinched. She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. Was this some kind of sick game to you? Dating me while sneaking around with my mother? No, it wasn't like that. He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration mounting. I cared about you, Olivia. I still do. But she was there for me in ways you weren't. A sharp slap echoed through the room. Ryan staggered back, eyes wide. You are the worst kind of man. Olivia's voice trembled with fury. You played with my heart. Lied to me. Lied to her. She wiped at her eyes, forcing back the tears that burned her throat. Then, she took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. It's over. Ryan's face crumpled. Olivia, please. She shook her head, stepping past him. Don't call me. Don't text me. You don't exist to me anymore. Then, without another word, she walked away, leaving Ryan standing in the wreckage of his own choices. Meanwhile, as Olivia was confronting Ryan, Emma was searching for me. I sat by the pool, my hands clasped together, staring into the water's reflection. The moon hung high above, bathing the world in silver light. I had expected her to come. I just didn't expect the desperation in her eyes when she finally did. Daniel. I didn't move, didn't acknowledge her. She stepped closer, her breath shaky. Daniel, please. Look at me. I did. And what I saw wasn't the woman I had married. It was a stranger. She dropped to her knees beside me, grabbing my hands. I made a mistake, she whispered. I was weak. I was stupid. But I never stopped loving you. I slowly pulled my hands away. Don't say that. Tears pooled in her eyes. I can fix this. A dark chuckle escaped my lips. Fix this. I shook my head, standing to my feet. Emma, you destroyed everything. She stood with me, reaching for my arm. It wasn't serious, Daniel. It was a mistake. I turned to her fully, my expression cold. A mistake? She nodded frantically. Yes, I lost myself, but it didn't mean anything. I exhaled sharply, stepping back. You had an affair with our daughter's boyfriend, and it didn't mean anything? She hesitated, realizing how absurd her words sounded. I love you, she whispered. I love our family. A bitter silence stretched between us. Then, I said the words that sealed our fate. I don't see you as my wife anymore. Her eyes widened, her face crumbling. No, Daniel, please. She clutched my shirt, her entire body trembling. We've been together for 20 years. You can't just throw that away. I gently removed her hands from me. I'm not the one who threw it away. She let out a broken sob, falling to her knees again. Please, don't leave me. I'll do anything. I took one last look at her, at the woman I had once loved. Then, I turned and walked away. She didn't follow. She just sobbed into the empty night, alone in the paradise she had ruined. Olivia sat on the edge of her hotel bed, staring at her phone screen, her fingers hovering over the flight confirmation page. Her heart pounded as she read the details over and over again. One-way ticket. Destination. London. Departure. Tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. She exhaled sharply, her grip tightening around her phone. There was no going back. She had made up her mind the moment she walked out of Ryan's hotel room. She wasn't just leaving the island. She was leaving them. Her mother. Ryan. Every lie she had been fed. There was nothing left for her here. She shoved her phone into her pocket and stood, grabbing her suitcase. There was still one last thing she needed to do. I was still awake when she knocked on my door. I had been expecting it. I opened it to find Olivia standing there, suitcase in hand, her face unreadable. Where are you going? I asked, though deep down, I already knew. She swallowed, eyes darting to the floor. London. I booked a flight for the morning. I studied her carefully. There was a quiet determination in her stance, a kind of resolve I hadn't seen before. She was done. Done with the pain. Done with the betrayal. Done with the people who had torn her apart. I nodded, stepping aside. Come in. She entered, setting her suitcase by the door before sinking onto the couch. For a long moment, we sat in silence, the weight of the past few days pressing down on us. I'm never speaking to her again, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Not her. Not Ryan. I don't care what happens to them. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. After a few moments, she looked up at me, her expression hesitant. Will you be okay? I forced a small smile. I should be asking you that. She gave a hollow laugh, shaking her head. I don't know, but I'll figure it out. That was all I needed to hear. I reached forward, pulling her into a tight embrace. I'm proud of you, Olivia. Her breath hitched, and for the first time since that horrible night at the restaurant, she let the tears fall. We sat like that for a long time, father and daughter, two people picking up the broken pieces of their lives. By morning, she was gone. When Emma returned home 2 days later, she expected tension. She expected silence. She didn't expect to find all of her belongings packed into boxes on the front porch. Her breath caught in her throat as she stumbled up the steps, her hands trembling. The house, their home, felt foreign, like it no longer belonged to her. Then the front door opened, and there I was, standing in the doorway, arms crossed, my expression blank. She swallowed hard. Daniel, what is this? My voice was calm, but cold. Your things. Her eyes darted to the boxes, panic setting in. No, Daniel, Please. I told you. I made a mistake. I stepped forward, closing the door behind me. This is not a mistake, Emma. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. I leaned in slightly, my voice dropping lower. What you did, that was a choice. Her lip quivered, and she reached for my arm. Daniel, we can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can. I yanked my arm away as if her touch burned. No, Emma. My jaw tightened. I don't want to fix anything. I want you out of my life. Her face crumpled. You can't just throw me away like this. I let out a humorless laugh. Isn't that what you did to our marriage? Tears streamed down her face. Daniel, I love you. I took another step back. Don't say that. She dropped to her knees, sobbing, clutching at the hem of my shirt. Please, don't do this. I have nothing without you. I finally let the fury I had been holding in rise to the surface. I looked down at her, my voice sharp as a knife. You had everything, and you threw it away for nothing. She sobbed harder, but I was done. I turned, walking back inside, and just before I shut the door, I said the last words I would ever say to her. Goodbye, Emma. Then I closed the door in her face. Ryan tried to reach Olivia. She never answered. He sent messages, left voicemails, even tried calling from a different number. But Olivia had meant what she said. He no longer existed to her. Words spread quickly among their mutual friends, and soon, Ryan found himself alienated, shunned. No one wanted to be associated with a man who had not only cheated but had done so with his girlfriend's own mother. In a matter of weeks, his entire world crumbled. And as for Emma, she vanished. With nowhere to go and no one left to turn to, she left town, disappearing from our lives completely. I never bothered to find out where she went. I didn't care. I sat in the quiet of my house that night, the space feeling both empty and liberating. For the first time in decades, I was truly alone, but I wasn't afraid of it, because loneliness was better than betrayal. Loneliness was better than sharing my life with a woman who had destroyed everything we built. So I poured myself a drink, leaned back in my chair, and let the silence settle in. I had lost my wife, but I had gained peace, and that was something no one could take away from me. Reflections on a betrayed heart. Months had passed since everything collapsed, but the sting of betrayal never fully faded. I still found myself waking in the dead of night, staring into the dark, thoughts swimming in the void. Some nights, it felt like nothing had changed. The house felt colder, the silence louder. The memories of Emma's laughter, her smile, the quiet moments we shared, they were gone, washed away in the wake of her lies. Yet, despite the ache in my chest, despite the rage that still lingered, there was an undeniable sense of clarity. A part of me had been freed. Freedom wasn't just the absence of a person. It was the absence of the weight that came with living a lie. I had spent so many years giving everything I had to someone who would never be capable of reciprocating that love. To someone who, when given the choice, chose to destroy it all. But now, I was free. And somehow, even in the silence of my empty home, there was peace. I was sitting in my study when I received an envelope. It wasn't anything special, just a simple letter, tucked between the bills and the usual assortment of junk mail. It wasn't until I saw the name on the return address that my heart skipped a beat. Olivia. I hadn't heard from her in months. Since the day she left for London, I'd been unsure of what kind of relationship we'd even have. She had needed space, and I'd respected that. But now, as I sat there staring at the letter in my hand, the weight of it settled deep within me. I opened it slowly, the crisp paper between my fingers trembling just a little. I read her words with a steady gaze. Dear Dad, I don't know where to start. I guess the most important thing is to tell you that I'm okay. I've settled here in London, and while it hasn't been easy, it's been better than staying in the place where all those memories were. I'm starting fresh, new job, new apartment, new people in my life. I'm not the same person I was before. I've grown. I think about you every day. I know I hurt you, but I need you to know that I'm okay, and I'll always be your daughter. I love you. I hope you're finding your peace, too. Love, Olivia. The letter was short, simple, but it left a warmth in my chest I hadn't expected. She was growing, living her life. In a way, healing. I folded the letter carefully and placed it on the desk. My heart swelled with pride, but also sadness, because no matter how far she went, a part of me would always carry that hurt. The hurt of watching her have to pick up the pieces of her own life, just as I was. It wasn't long after Olivia's letter that another envelope arrived. This one, however, was not from my daughter. It was from Emma. I didn't open it. I already knew what it would say. I knew because for months, Emma had been trying to reach me. She'd sent messages, left voicemails, even called from a new number, hoping that I would somehow soften, that I would take her back. I didn't want to listen to the pleas, the remorse, the guilt that poured out of her. I didn't want to hear her voice, begging for another chance. Not anymore. I had already heard it all. The excuses, the reasons, the apologies that fell hollow after the damage had been done. I had no more love to give her. So, I let the letter remain unopened. I didn't need to read her words to know what she was feeling. I could see it in the way she had disappeared from the town, in the way she had tried and failed to reach out. I had learned everything I needed to know about her when she destroyed the life we built. And as much as I once loved her, I realized I could never return to that life. I had to let it all go. It was late one evening when I stood by the window, staring out at the vast sky, the stars scattered across the black canvas above. For a moment, I imagined Emma and Ryan, somewhere far away, dealing with the consequences of their actions. I didn't know their story anymore, and I didn't care. What mattered was this life I was rebuilding, piece by piece. I had lost everything, but, in a strange way, I had also gained something I hadn't had in years: dignity. It wasn't about the money, the house, or the possessions that Emma had taken with her. No, the most valuable thing I had was the self-respect that had been buried under years of deceit. I had chosen to walk away, to never let her back in my life, and in doing so, I had taken control of my own destiny. I would rather be alone than be with someone who never valued me. I would rather face the loneliness than share a life with a person who had shattered me. And so, I stood in the stillness of that night, letting the calm wash over me. The pain had faded, and in its place was a quiet strength. I was still here, and I would continue to move forward, not because I had to, but because I had found the will to do so. As I looked out into the night, I felt something stir inside of me, a warmth, a glimmer of hope, despite everything. I wasn't happy, not yet, but I was alive. I had my dignity, and that was more than enough. I allowed myself a small smile, knowing that even though I had suffered, I had done the one thing that mattered most. I had stayed true to myself, and that made everything worth it. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating tales that explore the complexities of life and love. Share your thoughts in the comments. How do you think Daniel found the strength to move on? I'd love to hear your perspective. Until next time, take care and remember, your dignity is your greatest treasure. See you soon.